I did not come here to start over. I came here because I had nowhere else to go. The first night in the house, I slept on the floor. Not because there was no bed, there was, but because it didn't feel right to disturb anything yet. The place held a silence so thick it felt like breathing inside someone else's memory. This house was not mine. Not really. It belonged to a woman I had never met, and somehow she had left it to me. That is where this story begins. The letter arrived 3 months after my divorce was finalized. A plain envelope, no return address, my name written in careful, almost old-fashioned handwriting. Inside was a single page. If this reaches you, then the house is ready to be opened. It was always meant for you. Go before the winter comes. There was also a key. I remember sitting at my kitchen table, staring at it for nearly an hour. Outside, traffic moved like nothing in the world had shifted. Inside me, everything had. At that time, I had already sold most of what I owned. The apartment felt temporary, like a waiting room where no one ever called your name. My marriage had ended quietly, not with shouting, but with exhaustion. 2 people slowly realizing they had run out of words. "Where will you go now?" my sister had asked me on the phone. "I don't know," I told her. But that was before the letter. The house was far from the city, a long road that narrowed into gravel, then into dirt, then into something that barely qualified as a path. It was early autumn when I arrived. Leaves covered the ground in layers of gold and rust. The air smelled like damp earth and something faintly sweet. I remember stepping out of the car and feeling a strange calm settle over me. Not comfort, something quieter than that, like being noticed without being seen. The house stood at the edge of a wide clearing, wooden, weathered, not abandoned, but waiting. I whispered aloud without realizing it. "I don't belong here." The wind moved through the trees as if answering. Inside, the air carried the scent of old paper and cedar wood. Dust floated in slow beams of light from the windows. Nothing was broken, nothing was messy. Everything felt paused mid-breath. A small table near the entrance held a leather-bound notebook. I didn't touch it that day. Some instincts arrive without explanation. The first week passed in routine. I cleaned, I opened windows, I walked the surrounding land. There were no neighbors nearby, only trees, sky, and the distant sound of a stream. Loneliness here felt different from loneliness in the city. In the city, loneliness pressed against you. Here, it expanded around you. At night, I began writing again. Not in the leather notebook, in my own journal. Day 5. The silence is not empty. I keep feeling like I'm being remembered by something. I laughed after writing that. It sounded dramatic, but I did not cross it out. On the 8th day, I finally opened the leather notebook. The pages were filled with handwriting similar to the letters. Neat, patient, observant. The first entry read, "If you are reading this, then time has done its work. I hope you arrived before the cold." My hands went still. I turned the page. "You do not know me, but I have known of you since before you were born." That was the moment the house stopped feeling quiet. It began to feel like a conversation. The entries were not daily records. They were fragments. Observations about seasons, about waiting, about someone unnamed who would one day come. One passage unsettled me deeply. She will arrive carrying more grief than she admits, but she must not leave quickly. The truth reveals itself slowly here. I closed the notebook. My reflection in the window looked like a stranger. That night, sleep did not come easily. Every sound seemed deliberate. The settling wood, the wind brushing against the walls, the distant call of something moving outside. Around midnight, I heard footsteps above me. Soft, slow. I froze in bed, listening. The house had an upper level I had not yet explored fully. The stairs were narrow and steep. I had told myself I would go up when I felt ready. That night, the house decided otherwise. I lit a candle and climbed. Each step creaked like a whisper. At the top, a small hallway stretched into darkness. One door stood slightly open. The room inside was nearly empty, except for a chair facing the window, and on the floor beside it, a small wooden box. When I touched the box, I felt an unexpected warmth, as if it had been held recently. Inside were photographs, all of them of places: the clearing, the trees, the stream, and one photograph of the house itself, taken many years ago. On the back, written in the same careful handwriting, "She will come when she believes she has lost everything." I sat on the floor for a long time, not afraid, but known.
The next morning I made tea and spoke aloud for the first time since arriving. "Who were you?" I asked the empty room. No answer came, but I noticed something I had not seen before. A small door beneath the staircase. Locked. The key from the letter fit perfectly. Inside was not a storage space. It was a narrow room lined entirely with shelves, and on those shelves, dozens of notebooks. Every one written in the same hand. Every one waiting. I realized then that the house had not been left to me. It had been prepared for me. And whatever truth lived here, it had been written long before I arrived. That was the day I understood. I had not escaped my life. I had stepped into something that had been quietly unfolding for years, and I had the unsettling feeling that my own story was already written somewhere inside this house.
I told myself I would read only one notebook each day. It felt like the safest way to approach something that clearly had no intention of being simple. The shelves beneath the staircase were arranged with careful order, dates written on the spines, though many years were missing. Not missing by accident, missing as if deliberately left blank. The first notebook I chose was the oldest. The paper inside had softened with age, and the ink had faded slightly, but the handwriting remained steady, patient, observant, never rushed. The opening line read, "Waiting is a form of love that rarely receives recognition." I sat on the floor, my back against the wall, and began reading. The writer never named herself. She wrote about the house as if it were not just a place, but a companion. She described seasons in detail, the way winter light entered through the eastern window, the exact day the first leaf fell each year, the sound of the stream during heavy rain. But among those quiet observations were passages that felt directed, not to a general reader, but to someone specific. To me. One entry made my chest tighten. She will doubt what she reads. She will think coincidence is easier than connection, but grief sharpens the senses in ways joy never does. I closed the notebook and pressed my fingers against my temples. "This is impossible," I whispered. But the house did not feel impossible. It felt patient. Days passed in a rhythm that felt both natural and strange. I cleaned less, I explored more. Every room seemed to contain something placed not randomly but intentionally, objects that held stories without explaining them. One afternoon, while dusting a shelf in the living room, I discovered a loose wooden panel behind a row of books. Inside was a folded piece of paper. A map. Not of the surrounding land, but of the house itself, marked with small symbols in specific places. Circles, lines, a single cross near the back wall of the kitchen. I followed the marking without fully deciding to. The cross corresponded to a section of flooring that looked identical to the rest. Only when I knelt down did I notice a slight variation in the wood grain. A hidden latch. The compartment beneath was shallow. Inside lay a bundle wrapped in cloth. When I opened it, I found letters, all addressed to me. Not by name, but unmistakably meant for me. The first letter began, "You will reach this point when curiosity becomes stronger than fear. That is the correct time to continue." My hands trembled as I unfolded the next page. "There are truths about your life that were kept from you, not out of malice, that protection. You were never meant to grow up within the shadow of what happened here." I felt the room tilt slightly. "What happened here?" I asked aloud. The house remained silent, but silence here never felt empty. It felt like listening. That evening, I called my mother. We had not spoken in weeks. Our conversations had grown careful after my divorce, as if we were both afraid of touching something fragile. "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "did you ever know someone who lived in this house?" There was a pause. Longer than it should have been. "No," she said finally. "Why would you ask that?" "I just wondered if maybe someone in the family—" "We never had family out there," she interrupted gently. "You know that." Her voice carried something else. Not denial, restraint. "Mom," I asked quietly, "was anything ever hidden from me about our past?" Another pause. When she spoke again, her voice softened. Every parent hides something from their child. Not secrets, just pain they don't want passed on. Before I could respond, she changed the subject. When the call ended, I sat in the kitchen for a long time staring at the letters spread across the table. Protection. From what? The weather shifted quickly after that. Cold air arrived earlier than expected. The trees around the house thinned, their branches stretching bare against pale skies. The house began making new sounds at night. Not footsteps this time. A faint tapping somewhere inside the walls. Not constant, not rhythmic. More like movement interrupted. I tried to ignore it. But one night, unable to sleep, I followed the sound to the narrow room beneath the staircase. It was colder there than in the rest of the house.
I placed my ear against the wall behind the shelves. The tapping came from deeper within, as if something hollow existed beyond the wood. I pressed gently against one section. It shifted. A hidden panel opened inward, revealing a narrow passage just wide enough to step through. I hesitated only briefly. The passage led to a small enclosed space. Not a room, more like a cavity built between walls. Inside stood a single wooden chair and a small writing desk. On the desk rested another notebook. Unlike the others, this one had no date. Its first entry was written differently. The handwriting remained careful, but the ink pressed harder into the page. If you have found this space, then you are ready to know why the house chose you. My breath caught. I sat in the chair and continued reading. The unnamed writer described a night many years ago. A storm, a car accident on the road leading to the house. A child inside the vehicle, injured but alive. The writer had taken the child in, cared for her quietly, never revealing herself to authorities. The reason was never stated clearly, but one sentence burned itself into my mind. She must never know how close she came to disappearing from the world that night. Some truths heal only when discovered freely. I pressed the notebook to my chest. "Why me?" I whispered into the narrow space. No answer came, but for the first time, the silence did not feel neutral. It felt compassionate. In the days that followed, I noticed something I had previously overlooked. The house did not feel haunted by the past. It felt structured around preservation. Every hidden space, every notebook, every message had been placed with care, not to frighten, but to guide. Someone had watched over me once, and even after they were gone, their protection had not ended. But one question remained unanswered. Who was she? And why had she chosen me? Late one evening, as winter's first frost traced delicate patterns across the windows, I discovered the final letter among the hidden bundle beneath the kitchen floor. The envelope was sealed. My name was written on the front in the same careful hand. Inside was a single sentence. "When you are ready to know the truth, open the cedar chest in the upper room." I knew the chest she meant. I had seen it weeks earlier and avoided it without understanding why. That night, I did not sleep. Morning arrived pale and quiet. With steady hands, I climbed the narrow staircase once more. The cedar chest waited near the window, exactly where I remembered it. For a long moment, I simply stood there, listening to my own breathing. Then I lifted the lid. Inside lay a folded document and a small photograph. The photograph showed a young woman standing beside this very house. Her face was calm, familiar, painfully familiar. I realized with a shock that stole the air from my lungs. She looked exactly like me. Not similar, not resembling, identical. My reflection, decades earlier. The document beneath the photograph began with a single line. "My name is Elena, and I am the woman you were told died before you were born." My hands trembled so violently I had to sit down. Everything I believed about my past began to unravel in silence. And for the first time since arriving, I understood. The house had not only been waiting for me, it had been keeping a truth alive until I was strong enough to carry it.
I did not open the document immediately. My hands rested on the cedar chest as if touching something fragile enough to disappear if moved too quickly. Outside the window, the trees stood bare against a pale winter sky. Light entered the room in a soft, quiet way, the kind of light that reveals without demanding. The photograph lay beside me on the wooden floor. Her face, my face, watched calmly from another time. For most of my life, I had believed my Aunt Elena died before I was born. That was the story I had grown up with. A distant tragedy never explained in detail, mentioned rarely, and always with careful silence afterward. But the woman in the photograph was not distant. She was present. She had lived here. She had written every word I had read. With trembling fingers, I unfolded the document. The paper contained a letter written in the same steady handwriting as the notebooks, but the tone was different, more personal, less observational. Not written for a future reader, written for me. My dearest child, if you are reading this, then time has allowed you to arrive not only at this house, but at yourself. I am Elena, not your aunt, as you were told, but your mother. The words blurred instantly. I pressed my palm against my mouth to steady my breathing. My mother, the letter continued. You were not taken from me. You were entrusted to safety. The night of the accident was not chance. There were circumstances I could not control. People who believed your existence threatened something they valued. I had little power to protect you openly, but I had enough to ensure you would survive. Your grandparents agreed to raise you as their own daughter. It was the only way to remove you from danger without raising suspicion. They loved you deeply. That was never false. Tears fell freely now, landing on the paper in quiet drops. My entire life had been shaped by a decision made before I could speak, before I could know, before I could remember. Protection.
The word returned again and again through everything I had read. I remained here, watching from a distance whenever I could, not interfering, only ensuring that the path ahead of you remained open. I did not want gratitude. I wanted possibility. If you are here now, it means you have known loss. I am sorry for the pain that brought you to this place, but I also know this. You would not have found your strength without walking through it. I stopped reading and closed my eyes. My marriage, my loneliness, my years of searching for meaning without understanding why something always felt incomplete. Nothing had been random. Nothing had been abandoned. I had been protected in ways I never knew. The final section of the letter was shorter, almost gentle in tone. This house was never meant to be an inheritance. It is a refuge, a place where truth is allowed to unfold without force. I preserved what I could here so that one day you would have the choice I did not. You are not required to stay. You are not required to believe everything you have learned. You are only asked to live fully, without fear of the past. If you ever wonder whether you were loved, you were, in silence, in distance, in patience, but completely, with all that I was able to give, Elena. I do not know how long I remained sitting on the floor. Time in that room moved differently, not slowly, not quickly, simply without urgency. For the first time since my divorce, I did not feel abandoned. For the first time in my life, I did not feel like a story missing its beginning. Everything I had interpreted as emptiness now held shape. My mother had not disappeared. She had remained where she believed I would one day need her most, in a place where truth could arrive gently. I returned to the narrow room beneath the staircase, carrying the photograph and letter. I placed them beside the notebooks, adding them to the quiet archive that had preserved so much of my life without my knowledge. Then I sat at the small desk. For a long moment I did not write. I simply rested my hands on the surface where she had once written, feeling the faint grooves left by years of pressure from her pen. Finally, I opened a blank page. My handwriting looked unfamiliar to me, not because it had changed, but because for the first time it did not feel uncertain. I wrote, "I am no longer searching for where I belong. I am learning how to remain." The words felt simple, but they held weight. Winter settled fully around the house in the weeks that followed. Snow softened the clearing. The stream moved slowly beneath thin ice. The world grew quiet in a way that did not feel lonely. I spoke with my mother, the woman who raised me, soon after reading the letter. She listened without interrupting as I explained everything. When I finished, she said only this: "We loved you as our daughter because you were our daughter. Truth does not change love. It only widens it." There was no anger, no resentment, only relief that what had been hidden to protect me no longer needed to remain hidden. Some silences, I learned, are not empty. They are protective. Spring arrived gradually. Small green shoots pushed through thawing soil. The house no longer felt like a place I had entered. It felt like a place that had entered me. I began restoring rooms not to preserve the past, but to allow the future space to exist beside it. One afternoon, while working in the garden, I noticed a small wooden marker near the edge of the clearing, weathered, nearly hidden beneath moss. I cleared it gently. No dates were carved into the wood. Only a single word: continue. I smiled through unexpected tears. That had always been the message, even when I could not see it. I no longer wonder why my life unfolded as it did. I no longer search for meaning in loss. Meaning was never hidden, only waiting for the moment I was able to recognize it. The house did not change my life. It revealed the strength that had always been quietly protected within it. Tonight, I write this final entry sitting by the window where my mother once sat. The air carries the scent of earth waking after winter. Somewhere beyond the trees, water moves steadily over stone. I understand something now that I could not understand before. Healing does not erase what came before. It gives it a place to rest. If you are reading these words one day, if you have arrived here believing your life has broken beyond repair, know this: loss is not always an ending. Sometimes it is an opening we do not recognize until we step through it. You are not alone in your becoming. You are not forgotten in your silence. And even when truth arrives slowly, it arrives with purpose. I once believed I had come here because I had nowhere left to go. Now I know the truth. I was led here because something within me was ready to live fully at last. And for the first time, I do not feel like a story interrupted. I feel like a life, continuing.